And we're back. So, back on the set here for the entertainment guy. Been a while, hasn't it? Normally Shadow would be up here, but he's decided he'd rather eat some food and have something to drink. That's one thing with me filming out here is it's the kitchen. So it's the kitchen, so the cat's kind of like, hey, we got other things to do than just sit on a cat tree. But it's here in case he wants it soon. I want to talk about AEW Rampage from tonight. I also want to talk about AEW in general. I've had a lot of people asking me about the whole wrestling question and what do I think of this and that. I'll be honest, WWE can't hold my interest. Hasn't held my interest for a while. I watched tonight's AEW Rampage. I watched the whole thing. Now, it is only an hour. But I'm old enough to remember when wrestling shows were an hour. Superstars was an hour. Maple Leaf Wrestling was an hour. You'd have an hour, you'd watch wrestling, and then you go do something else. And Raw being 3 hours, it's too long. I don't have the attention span for 3 hours of. I don't care that much. They can try to build the anticipation for a main event of two guys that we saw fight last week all they want, but I don't really care. AEW's got 2 hours for Dynamite, which I think is good, and WWE has 2 hours for SmackDown. The interesting thing is that people talk about SmackDown being the better show. I think the fact that it's 2 hours helps. It does have better writers than Raw. But there's a huge difference between AEW and WWE. Tonight, CM Punk comes out. It was the most amazing crowd reaction I think I've ever heard. And I mean, I remember when Bret Hart came out to a WWE ring for the first time after forever and the reaction he got. I remember Hogan's various returns to the ring and the ovations he's got. Cena making the surprise appearance at the Royal Rumble and what he got. Edge making his surprise appearance at the Royal Rumble and what he got. And Jericho and some of the massive moments for Chris Jericho where he's had huge ovations. It feels like what CM Punk, that the reaction CM Punk got might have been tops. Now, yes, it is in Chicago. And he is Chicago's favorite son. But, you know, I'm watching this and I'm thinking about how they booked this. You could have held it till the end. You could have. But the fans would have hijacked the show. AEW understands the fans are coming in. They've all got CM Punk signs. They're all chanting CM Punk. Myself, before I watched tonight's show, I listened to Cult of Personality by In Living Color because that's his theme song. And at the start of the show, when they started playing his theme song, I kind of half expected MJF or Kenny Omega or somebody else to come out, and they didn't. It's CM Punk. He came out. You could tell he was honestly moved by the fans. He said all the right things. And I think tonight, where he just sat in the ring and talked, that's to get all that out of the way. So all of that baggage is gone. He didn't mention WWE by name. He basically said, I loved wrestling in ROH, and then I left wrestling, and now I'm back. And I get what he's saying. People are going to say it's taking a shot. WWE is World Wrestling Entertainment. The entertainment is a big part of it. WWE always markets the network and all the shows and everything else they've got. But it kind of waters down the product. It kind of waters down the product. AEW has not done that yet. There's always the potential, but they haven't done it yet. I think that when Vince McMahon says he doesn't think of AEW as a threat, I think he's being honest. Because I don't think they're selling the same product. AEW, it's very clear now that AEW is a wrestling show for wrestling fans. WWE is geared towards selling t-shirts, which is weird because AEW not that long ago was called a t-shirt company. And so WWE is more about selling merch and who's going to be the next champion and who do we envision as being a WWE champion and how are we going to fix this and fix this and fix this. And AEW, it just feels like guys are having fun. Moxley tonight, he goes out there and he has a really good match with Daniel Garcia, who he beats, but he still puts over. And I think back to like on Dynamite where you see MJF, he beats Jericho. It makes total sense. The Jericho, at this point, 50 years of age, against a much younger MJF, who is the dastardly heel, MJF finds a way to win that match. And honestly, that was the right outcome. And I think with AEW, and I mean, I've been watching these for years, I find myself scratching my head a lot less at results with AEW than I do with WWE. Where a lot of the time I'll watch the results of a WWE match and I'll say, why would that guy win there? Doesn't it make sense for him to lose here and win the next one, or vice versa? You know, why does he lose here? He should be winning. And in AEW, I don't feel that way as much. I think a good example would be almost anything Kenny Omega right now. Like, Christian beats him for the Impact title. So what that does is it leaves Kenny Omega in place as the AEW champion, right? But it also puts Christian kind of on his level with the Impact belt. Christian has a history with the company, Impact Wrestling. And so him holding their title isn't a stretch. And it's not something that fans of Impact would have take any offense to, or say, well, this isn't right. Like when WWE tried to bring back ECW, and sometimes the guy holding the ECW belt, definitely not an ECW wrestler. AEW's broken down that door. Tonight we see Kiera Hogan, who is an Impact wrestler, in AEW ring. And I think Kiera Hogan has something. She definitely has the necessary combination of the right look, and she's got enough unique qualities that I think at some point she's going to be making her way up. Same as Red Velvet did. Red Velvet lost a lot of matches, ton of matches, but she was learning, and you could see she was getting better with each match. I look at Julia Hart. That's another good example of a young wrestler who's learning, and so I expect her to lose matches, but she's going to start moving her way up. And they do that very well. Like tonight, when CM Punk stands in the ring and he says, you know, basically, I'm fighting Darby Allin on September 5th at All Out. Me as a wrestling fan, right away I was thinking, I should get that pay-per-view. I should pay $50 or $60, whatever it is, to watch that pay-per-view because I want to see that match. And that's something that with WWE I really haven't had, because again, it feels like there's too many rematches. I've already seen a lot of these guys fight each other. Like SummerSlam's tomorrow. I don't have any interest in Goldberg versus Bobby Lashley, and I know they're trying to get the build going. I don't really have any interest. Roman Reigns versus John Cena. I really don't have any interest in that. And, maybe it's just me being an older wrestling fan. I find that the feuds that are going on in AEW to be more interesting to me. And it reminds me of when I was a wrestling fan in the 80s. And I would watch WWE, but I would stay up until, before it was WCW, when it was NWA. And then, it became WCW, but it was National Wrestling Alliance, which is still around. It was weird, but it became WCW. But when I would watch NWA wrestling, it was on at, I want to say it was like 12:30 at night on a Saturday. And I would stay up every Saturday to watch that. And it was on for an hour, and I was so enthralled with the Four Horsemen, with Dusty Rhodes, with Sting, with the Road Warriors, with all of it. All of it I found really interesting. And they would have a mix of matches that were 30-second squashes, and then you'd have a pretty good match. But it wouldn't take away from the big pay-per-view match. So if you had a big match building to, if you were building up to Sting versus Ric Flair, you wouldn't have them in the ring 3 times in a row, 3 weeks in a row, where it's, again, tonight we're going to have Sting versus Ric Flair. They wouldn't do that. They would keep them apart. It's something I've wanted WWE to start doing a little more of. I know some feuds work this way, but they don't keep guys apart enough. You build to the match by keeping them apart. An example tonight with AEW was you have the Jurassic Express, and Jungle Boy's fantastic. That is one of the best wrestling entrance songs I've heard because all the fans can sing along. You have a winner when the fans can sing along. But you have the Young Bucks there, right, to watch this match against Private Party, and Private Party always kills it. They're fantastic. But there was no interaction between the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express during this show. Young Bucks sit on the stage. They didn't get involved. They didn't try any distractions. They were just there watching. And you get the feeling that the match they're building towards on September 5th, because it's in a cage, which to me gives the game away, it has to be Jurassic Express. It could be the Lucha Brothers, but the Lucha Brothers, it feels like they're going to turn them heel and pair them up with Andrade and build up a new stable around Andrade and Chavo. And it's great seeing Chavo Guerrero in like a mentorship role as a manager, as a mouthpiece. It's absolutely great. I am so happy to see Chavo back in wrestling. And obviously there's other things I'm waiting for. Ric Flair gets released by WWE. My first thought was, okay, so Arn Anderson, he's in AEW. Tully Blanchard is in AEW. Ric Flair has to go to AEW. You have to have the three of them in the ring together and find a way to get a fourth. And just to have that moment of the Horsemen, just for that moment on TNT, I think it would be fantastic. AEW has an ability to make me anticipate next week's event, to want to watch the entirety of an event, not go, okay, this segment I'm not interested in. Who's fighting in it's Britt Baker? I'm not interested in Britt Baker. That's nothing that I've said. It's Darby Allin. I'm not interested in Darby Allin. I haven't said that either. There's no wrestlers in AEW I'm not invested in on some level. So while I understand that, it's all pre-decided and people use the word fake a lot, pulling punches and whatnot, it doesn't make it fake. I've never really embraced the whole fake thing. I remember, years and years and years back as a teenager, I would envision having a wrestling company and creating wrestlers and how that would work. And that was at a time where even as a teenager, I understood because my dad told me. I'm watching wrestling one day. I was like, wow, Dad, that guy's really big. And how's that little guy able to punch the big guy and he falls down? And my dad said, it's not real. It's not a real fight. And so my dad explained it to me. And it didn't make me not want to watch. It made me want to watch more. Because I was like, okay, how does this work? So where's he pulling the punch? He's stomping his foot. Okay, so that's all right. So that's to make the ring make the big noise, to make the punches seem more vicious. And now of course the big joke is that they do the leg slap when they're doing a side kick or a super kick. And I don't understand why people are making it like it's a big joke. It's about the illusion, right? It's about selling that idea. And I think AEW just sells it very, very well. And the other thing that I like with AEW is from week to week. So if I'm watching Rampage tonight and if I watched Dynamite a couple of nights ago, I'm not going to say, well, wait a minute. Why is this person fighting that person? This person's a face tonight. They were a heel on the last show. If that happens, you understand. Like when Britt Baker's wrestling in Pittsburgh, you can't turn the fans against Britt Baker. She is the queen of wrestling right now. She has almost like a Stone Cold Steve Austin level of she can say whatever she wants and people are still going to cheer her in the DMD. Yeah, that's so over with the crowd. But when she's fighting Red Velvet, well, you had to make Red Velvet the heel in the match. And then as soon as the match is over, you can have it switch back because you're setting up the next week. So that's where logically it makes sense to me as a wrestling fan. And I feel like WWE, who still employs Sasha Banks, I feel like for WWE, I'm no longer part of the target audience. They honestly have geared it towards a younger crowd. You look at the 24/7 title, that would only really appeal to kids. The 24/7 title and all of that, it's not serious on any level, and it doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the show. And it's too bad because R-Truth, Ron Killings, is fantastic. He is so good. And when they should have pulled the trigger on giving him a title run and making him a big star, which was right around when he was doing the little Jimmy stuff, but before it became stupid, before it became ridiculous, when he was kind of a bad guy and kind of crazy, And it felt like that was where he was at a level that they could have put the title on him and had him take a run with it, and they didn't. And now he's kind of a comedy act, and he seems like a really great guy. Ron Killings, I've never seen anybody say anything about him not being a great guy, and he's one of those guys that I look at and I say, what could AEW do with him? What could they do with Ron the Truth Killings if he came over there? What would that look like? And with CM Punk coming in tonight, rumors of Daniel Bryan being on his way in too, and the ratings having been better over the last few months for AEW, we'll see what happens when hockey comes in, because on TNT they're going to have the NHL games on Wednesday, and so there's some discussion about whether or not Dynamite's going to be on Wednesday. Where do you move Dynamite, and how that might hurt their ratings? So that's the one thing that I'm concerned with, but outside of that, I think they've done a really good job. I don't know how much money the company's generating. It was a sold-out house today in Chicago. That crowd was absolutely electric through the entire show. I didn't see a single segment where they were chanting boring. I didn't see a single segment where they were chanting for a wrestler that wasn't there. I didn't see a single segment where I didn't feel like the fans were invested in it. And it didn't feel like there was any segment that had no effect on anything. Even like Jade Cargill squashing Kira Hogan. Kira got some moves in first, and then it still turns into a squash. So you build up Jade Cargill a little bit more, and a couple of squashes from now, I would expect she gets into a legit feud with somebody. Looking at Big Swole here, if she's available, that could be a really good feud for Jade Cargill, and it would be somebody who maybe feels like they could challenge Jade Cargill, and they could maybe make the fans think, so is this the one that's going to give her first loss? So yeah, I was very impressed with the entire show from start to finish. CM Punk you could tell he was blown away by the crowd reaction tonight. Him jumping into the crowd may have given security nightmares, but it's CM Punk. It's what he does. He is a guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. He might be a pain to deal with backstage. That's always been kind of the rumble, that he's kind of very opinionated and he can be kind of a pain to deal with. But he's already proven he's one of the best of all time. And today, the first time he's been in a ring in over 7 years, that crowd went absolutely insane. And I have to be honest, if I had been in that crowd, I would have been one of the ones yelling just as loud as everybody else. I would have gone completely bonkers. Because Punk is that good at it. He is that good at making you care. And that it feels like that's where sometimes with WWE that now there's that disconnect. And it's, one thing I thought of tonight with that CM Punk thing is, they didn't do anything other than just play his music and bring him out. And in WWE, there's always this, like, I felt like if he was coming into WWE, they would have saved it for the end of the night. That it wouldn't have been to open the show. And that they would have had to have this big thing where maybe Triple H comes out and introduces him, or the GM comes out to introduce him. Somebody comes out and they have this big production, but it's in the end of the show, and the fans would hijack everything in between. And it just feels like what the way AEW approached it was as a wrestling company, and the way that WWE approaches things is as an entertainment company more than as a wrestling company. And for me, I enjoy the wrestling. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's next. I think, honestly, I think there's room in the wrestling world for both companies to thrive, to do very well, because they really appeal to completely different audiences. There are the WWE fans that are absolutely staunch WWE, will not support anything AEW does. And there are AEW fans who are the same way with WWE. I wish it wasn't as tribal as it is. I wish it wasn't as, well, that company sucks because I like this one better. Because I don't think... I know that's not the way wrestlers feel about it. They're happy to see both companies thrive because it means more job opportunities. And if you can build up Impact, build up ROH, and if you have an agreement with New Japan and guys can go over there, you're creating more jobs for wrestlers at a time where that's really important. The economy got hit really, really hard in 2020, and I think what AEW is doing right now helps. It helps a lot of wrestlers find jobs and helps them out globally. So and not only that, but I thought the way they brought back Jamie Hayter last week, and it is a shame that I understand that there's a lot of fans going, who? I was very impressed with Jamie Hayter her first time around in AEW. I know that was almost 2 years ago, but I was very impressed with her skill level. And then I saw some of her stuff from Japan, and she's fantastic. So I really think people are going to be surprised at how good Jamie Hayter is when she gets into the ring on Dynamite, and I'll be watching. So there you go. A little wrestling video from me to you. Let me know what you thought if you watched the CM Punk show tonight, or Rampage as it's called, and how you felt about that. And which wrestling crowd, and it doesn't have to be WWE, it doesn't have to be AEW, which wrestling crowd reaction do you remember the most? Do you remember, and it can be nuclear heat, it could be like the crowd reaction we saw tonight with Punk. Which reaction do you remember the most that actually gave you goosebumps? And I admit, I had them tonight. Let me know your thoughts in that little comment section underneath the video. It still exists. I know that they try to hide it, but it's still there. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.